Fridays, a podcast on musical encounters and life.
Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays. We are with Bob. It's Mike D, and we're with Bob, my special guest. We don't use last names to protect the guilty. Bob, tonight is a special show for all my Black Crowes fans.
Nice.
I'm going to talk about the time I met my favorite band of all time, the Black Crowes.
Sounds good.
So, just to set the stage, and I know you're very interested in this, and this is more about, definitely more about me on this episode, but I hope you're cool with it.
Yeah.
The scene
absolutely.
is 1998, San Francisco, California, Maritime Hall. It is the last show of the Black Crowes tour of that year.
Okay.
I am unemployed, being laid off at an ad agency in San Francisco. I am wearing a German army jacket and carrying a copy of Siddhartha, the book.
Siddhartha.
And
Okay.
I'm with my roommate in San Francisco, and I say to him, listen, I have nothing else to do today. I'm going to go down the Maritime Hall, which was right outside of the downtown financial district in San Francisco. And I'm like, I'm going to go listen to the Black Crowes, sound check, the warm-up, right?
Oh, okay.
It's like 4
Cool,
o'clock.
cool.
And he's like, okay, you're crazy, whatever. So I go down there, and I'm literally dressed in a German army jacket.
The German army jacket.
And
Are you
I'm
still carrying the book? The
and
Siddhartha
I'm carrying
book?
the Siddhartha book, and I'm like, I'm going down to this hall, right?
Okay.
And I'm like, what am I doing? Whatever. So I go down, and I walk up to the building, and I'm literally trying to hang out with the Black Crowes, kind of, sort of, right?
What was the name of the place again? You said it.
Maritime Hall
Maritime
in
Hall.
San Francisco.
Is this a big, famous... I've
No,
never been
it's
to
like-
San Francisco.
It was probably like...
What's the venue? Is it?
Probably like 5,000 to 7,000.
Oh, so small.
Small,
Yeah.
but really almost like the Electric Factory
Sure.
in Philadelphia, right?
Indoor?
So,
Indoor?
Indoor.
Okay.
Tiny, intimate. So
Why were you carrying the Siddhartha book?
I don't know.
Okay.
I was like 22 years old.
I just Googled that. I didn't even know what that was.
Yeah,
But it's like
so-
about Buddhism or something, right? Or
I think it was Hemisi wrote it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very whatever.
Yeah, it's
I
a
was-
spiritual novel.
Yeah, it
by
was San
Herman Hesse.
Francisco.
You're right,
San
Hesse.
Francisco. Hesse.
Deals
yeah.
with the spiritual journey of self-discovery of a man named Siddhartha.
Yeah, it was
during
about the
time of
Buddha.
Gautama
Yes.
Buddha. The book is his 9th novel. It's written in German.
Yes.
Are you fluent in German?
No, but I
Okay.
was wearing a German army jacket.
And you had a German book.
that I bought with my cousin Nicole in San Francisco at a thrift store.
Okay.
So literally, I'm like, I remember telling my roommate, I'm like, I'm going down to see the Black Crowes, and he's like, whatever, dude.
All right. So you're going down. You're going down.
Yeah,
you
I'm
got your
going down.
jacket.
So
Yeah, okay.
I'm literally at the building. I'm at the building, and I'm like, how am I going to get into the building? And all of a sudden, this girl comes outside, and she's smoking a cigarette. So I start talking to her, and I'm like, hey, how's it going? She's like, hey, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And she's like,
Trying to shoot the shit.
yeah, I'm shooting the shit. I'm
Right.
just figuring out what her deal
Yeah,
is. And she's like, yeah, I run the kitchen, and my sous chef didn't show up.
Oh.
And I'm like,
You're like, well, I just so happen to be a sous chef.
I'm a sous chef.
Okay.
Because I spent 2 years in Ocean City, New Jersey at the Portical Hotel.
Which is where we are right now.
Being a sous chef.
Right.
So I'm like, literally,
You're like,
I'm
I'm your guy.
I'm
Like,
your guy.
Yeah.
And she's like, can you work tonight? So I'm like, yes. And she's like, what can you do? And I'm like, I can do anything in the kitchen. I can cut tomatoes. And she's like, cool, man.
All right.
And she's like smoking a cigarette. And she's like, you want a cigarette? I'm like, no, I don't smoke.
Right.
And next thing I know, Bob, I'm in the kitchen.
You're in the kitchen at
Maritime
Hall.
Cutting tomatoes, and I'm preparing food.
You're sous chefing.
I'm in the kitchen.
You're doing the sous chef
and
job.
I'm literally in my German army jacket with my Siddhartha book, cutting tomatoes,
That
being
is
like, I'm
that
in
is
the
like-
I'm in the building.
So step one accomplished. I'm
Step-
in the building.
I'm like,
Yes.
I'm in the building.
Well, you know, it just
I'm
goes to show,
unemployed
like,
and I'm in the building.
You thought that whole sous chef thing like didn't really, mean much, but here it is coming to pay to fruition.
You're right.
In down the road, like, see, it
You're
really
right.
everything happens for a reason.
Bob, I'm cutting tomatoes and I'm doing all this stuff, and this girl's asking me questions, and the whole time I'm like, I don't feel like fucking working. Like, this is not what I want to be
The
here
black
for.
crows are in the next room over. Like, why am I cutting these tomatoes?
So, first thing that the girl tells me to do, she's my boss now. Literally my new boss. She's like, bring this cooler up to the room. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, I'll bring it up to the room.
Okay.
So
No problem.
I get this cooler. It's like an igloo cooler of beer. And I literally carry it up to this green room, the dressing room, but there's no one up there. So I just put it in there. I'm like, okay, I'm like sussing out the scene, whatever. I'm 22 years old, whatever. It's like, okay.
At this point, are you thinking like the black crows are like in the next room, or are you just kind of going about
No.
your business?
Bob, I
Just
can
doing your job,
I can honestly
working for your new boss.
I can honestly say I am pretty chill in these experiences. Like, I'm like,
Just like, yeah,
whatever.
roll
like,
with it. Yeah,
like
I can see that about you.
Because you also, not only do you have to be cool, but it's like, whatever. It's like, whatever. It's like,
right.
and also, I have a job to do. I have a new boss. She has lots of expectations about me.
Of course.
I need
you
to
want to be a
deliver.
good employee and do your job.
I need to
We all do.
deliver.
Right.
She hired me in 1 second. So,
Like, I am not blowing this. This is
so-
like my big break.
Also, I was unemployed, so I was like, I
Right.
need the money.
Got a job.
So the best part about it is, so I'm talking there, and she's like, cut these tomatoes. I'm like, yeah, whatever, go fuck yourself. And she's like, oh, by the way, you can have a free ticket to tonight's show. So I'm like,
Oh,
Bob, I didn't tell her.
like,
I had 10 tickets in my pocket of all my friends who were coming to the show. So I had all their tickets.
you already had like 10 tickets,
I
including
had,
your own. Like
including my
ticket.
own.
Yeah.
I had all the tickets.
Oh,
So
she's like, you can have a free ticket. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
like,
was
I already
like,
got
whatever.
10 tickets. But,
So-
yeah, great.
So she didn't know that I was a Psycho fan. So I was acting like I wasn't, right? So I delivered the beer or whatever. So she's like, can you go downstairs and get this stuff, whatever. So I go downstairs. And I remember this like it's yesterday. So I go downstairs.
Right.
And all of a sudden I hear
Knock, knock,
like
knock.
this
Bang, bang.
knock on these silver doors. And I remember this to the day. And all of a sudden I go over to the doors. I'm like, who the fuck's behind this door?
Yeah.
And it's like 2 metal doors with the big rods.
Like big, heavy
and I
doors.
like push open the doors. And it was like the sunlight shined in.
Right.
And it was the fucking Black
You're like,
Rose.
"Oh."
Yeah, it was like,
Right.
and I'm like, and you
You're
know
like,
what they did?
Oh my god.
Know what
it's
they
Black
did?
Rose. Yeah.
They walked right fucking by me.
They didn't even say nothing.
Or like, not even thanks for opening the door. Right by me. But they were, Bob, I remember, they were,
You're like,
they were a
hey guys.
fucking rock band. Like,
Yeah. Like your
to
favorite
the
band. Like your
no, dressed to the T. Like, it's like, they're the
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
rock band, right? Like,
black.
and they go
like leather,
right,
like
they
hats and like.
go right by me.
Yeah,
And I'm
right.
just like, opening the door like a fucking valet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
they go by me, and I'm like, whatever. So I go back to the kitchen, and the woman's like, you got to do this and do that. And I'm like, I remember in my mind, I was like, you can keep working and be a pussy, or you can try to do something cool. And I was like, fuck it. I'm going to try to do something cool. So,
she wanted you to chop some more tomatoes or something.
well,
And
I was
you're
like, I'll cut a couple
I
tomatoes.
saw Black Rose.
Yeah. So I saw my band, right? And
Right.
they were like, whatever. Next thing I know is I hear some music, whatever, like, they're starting to like tune up or whatever. And it's like an empty arena, right? It's a small arena. So I go walk out to the arena, and the Black Crows are on stage, and they're starting to do sound check. Like, you're starting to play riffs and starting to like
Nice.
play music. And I'm just sitting there by myself, like,
So wait, did you kind of sneak away from your job at that point? Like, were you supposed to
I
be
think
still
I-
doing stuff,
I think
or were
I
you
quit
like,
my job
I'm
at
like,
that
I'm
point.
out. Yeah, you're just already, yeah, okay.
I think she knew I was not a good employee.
Like,
But-
I'm sorry, I can't keep chopping these onions and
Well,
tomatoes.
she
Like,
hired
I
me.
need to go.
She hired me with no references.
Of course. I mean, that's on her. That's on her.
I wonder if I could find her and be like, "Do you remember me?"
Maybe she's listening to the podcast right now.
So the Black Crows are like tuning up, and it's literally me in the middle of an empty arena, and they're starting to tune up, and all of a sudden this guy walks over, older guy,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you know who he is, but it was Wavy Gravy. So Wavy Gravy is an old
That sounds familiar.
60 like
Yeah.
people
Kinda like
on the
hippie rocker kinda thing?
People
Yeah.
on the podcast, look them up. It's
Yeah.
Wavy Gravy, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Wavy
So-
Gravy is standing right next to me,
What I
and
think
the Black
is interesting is that
Crows.
you knew who this guy was
Yeah.
right off the top of your head.
Well, the
like,
Black Crows start playing Beatles songs without singing, but Beatles songs riffs
Oh,
for
nice.
their sound check.
Yeah.
So I'm literally in San Francisco wearing a German armor jacket, holding a Siddhartha book,
Siddhartha. You still have the
sitting
Siddhartha?
next
You still have
to
the Siddhartha at this point?
yes,
Okay.
sitting next to Wavy Gravy,
Right.
listening to my favorite band play Beatles songs.
German
So I'm
Army
like-
Jacket,
yeah.
Siddhartha, Wavy Gravy, listening to Beatles songs being played by the Black Crows. Meanwhile, you got hired by a girl who, at this point, doesn't know where you are.
Yeah, and she didn't check my references.
She just said, shit, that's my fault. I should have checked some references.
She's probably like, "Why aren't these tomatoes
We
cut?"
got to find this girl. We
So-
got to somehow get back and find who this girl was. Okay.
So this
Anyway,
is the
yeah.
point where the Black Crows finished their sound check, whatever. In my head, as I always do, either fortunately or unfortunately, I'm like, okay, you can just settle with this, or you can try to do something cool. And I was like, I'm gonna try to do something cool for me, not anyone else.
Right.
So I proceeded to go upstairs
Right.
to where I delivered the beer,
Ah,
and I walked into the
good
green.
move, good move,
I walked
yeah.
into the green room,
Right.
and
Was it actually green? Was it a green room?
no,
They just call it
it's
that,
a dressing
right?
room.
Okay, yeah. I don't know.
I
all
don't
the
know why
terms.
they call it. Yeah.
Okay, that was a dumb question.
So I walk in, and literally
Right.
the Black Crows are sitting there watching a TV, and I walk in and I'm like, "Hey everyone, I'm Mike D," and Chris Robinson from the Black Crows says, "Hey Mike D, I'm Chris R," and I'm like, "Hi," and I proceed this. I sat down, and there was the cooler that I had brought, so I felt it was my obligation to open the cooler and have a
Like,
beer.
hey, do you
Like
guys-
I delivered
brought
it.
this up. Have you guys looked in here yet?
Yeah,
Like,
and they hadn't opened it. I'm like, I'm gonna have a beer.
Yeah.
So I got a beer, and from that moment on, we proceeded to watch 7 innings of the Atlanta Braves New York Yankees World Series game
Oh, okay.
together.
Wow.
So I watched the World Series with my favorite band in San Francisco in their dressing room before their final concert.
That is ridiculous.
And I had
That is
all my friends'
absolutely,
tickets in
like-
the room, in my pocket,
The show hadn't started yet, though.
Show hadn't started.
Yeah, you're just right.
which was a queue. So I hung out for literally 2 hours. So I'm sitting there, and they were cool. They were like nice and whatever.
Yeah.
I said a
Just
couple.
hanging out with the Black Crows.
Yeah,
Drinking beer,
and they-
watching the baseball.
I think they know that people are like, this guy either works here or whatever. Why is he wearing a German army jacket? Whatever. So probably hung out for 2 hours, watched the game, drank a couple beers, whatever. And then all of a sudden, some guy was like, comes up to me. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, I work here." And he's like, "Why aren't you working?" I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll see ya." Hey, I was like, "Thanks everyone for hanging out." This is pre-cell phone, right? So
was gonna say, like-
my friends have no idea where the tickets are.
It's so funny you said that because I was going to say, like, this is definitely pre-cell phone. So, like, there's no way that your friends can get in touch with you to be like, dude, where are you? We need the tickets. Like, so, okay. That's
So I had to
interesting.
call my friend on a payphone from outside the arena and was like, "I have the tickets," and I like left the message. And of course, back then it's like just like today, right? People call each other on their cell phones outside the arena, whatever.
Right.
And they were like, "Where were you? Where were you?" And I was like, "I was hanging out with the band, whatever." And they're like, "Only you? Yes, you were." And the Black Crows literally, I think that night played like 25 songs because it was like the last night of their tour
Right.
in San Francisco. They killed it. It was like my
Yeah.
all-time favorite band. And I remember, and I know you know my buddy Murray.
Murray, yeah.
Like,
He
I
was there?
remember the next day, I was so excited and happy. I called him. He was living in Cape May, New Jersey. And I was like, you're never going to believe what happened last night. I hung out with our favorite band of all time, you know? And it's like,
That's an incredible story.
oh,
I mean,
it's
it
like
really
the cool,
is. Like,
right? And this is when I want to hear from my audience and my fans.
There's
And
gotta
what
be-
I'm going to talk about on social is like
There's gotta be-
hanging out with your favorite band, right? Everyone's got stories.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not their favorite band, people have stories about hanging out with famous people, whether it's a band or just an actor or an actress or something like that. I'm sure that people have similar stories, but I would venture to guess not too many people have that cool of a story. That is a very cool story, you know.
Well,
I mean, you brought them beer, you're drinking them, you're watching baseball with the Black Crows, like 7 innings of it, like. Maybe some people have a cool story like that, and I hope they do, and they probably do. But it's a pretty cool story.
Yeah,
I gotta
and I think more importantly, and I've been lucky to meet some of my favorite artists and some famous actors or actresses. When people are cool, it makes it all that better.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my favorite band was cool. I've met other artists, like you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
it's like they know that the fans are the drivers of their art. I mean, that's what it comes
True.
down to.
No, that's how they make their money, you know, and support their their art, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's wild, man. You know.
So, Rock and Roll Fridays, my favorite band, meeting my favorite band. That's my story.
Awesome story, Mike.